It's 7 o'clock. Welcome you all to the Middleton City Hall. I'm going to open the meeting of the Middleton Plan Commission for Tuesday, May 28th, 2019 to order.
Say, Mayor, point of order. I'd like to make a motion that we eat cake.
No way.
And I'll second that motion.
You
I'm
do
seconding it
the-
as staff.
It's celebration cake.
All those in favor of the motion say aye. Well, all right.
Don't get in here without her seeing it.
So we're going to take a
Let the
break
record
for
reflect
the
why we
cake.
are eating cake.
Right.
So what does
I'm gonna
the,
say, let the.
is somebody going to tell me what that does cake say?
Well, there was a clue just now in the motion.
I'm sorry, you know what, I didn't get the motion, so sorry. I heard cake. and I
Leaf
was-
motion that we eat cake.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, seconded by Opitz, by unanimous acclamation.
Oh my gosh.
George, this is for you, something.
Eileen is retiring,
Oh, isn't that nice?
but they changed the state law and allowed early retirement at age 49.
Yeah, right.
Okay. Oh, don't you? And then it fell down on the ground.
Kind of fitting. How about we get with Eileen and since it's
That's
our,
a nice.
well, how are we gonna do it? With the plan commission?
Okay, let's come here, guys.
We'll get staff for sure.
One with,
You would have dressed up.
No, we're not supposed to do that.
Sure would be taken.
Okay, I'll go like this.
I would have been later.
Isn't that nice? That's very nice.
In there, Wayne. So which, we're looking at one camera at a time, right? Let's look at George.
Look at George's, don't look at mine.
Yes?
I'm good.
Thank you
Okay.
guys
So
so much.
You can trim off a few pounds for
You want me to cut it and pass it around?
any public.
well, congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you, that's
Thank
very
you, guys.
nice.
This
got
is-
it?
I
This is
can't,
great.
I can't bring treats next time because I can't hold up that.
Oh, you can bring treats.
I can bring cookies. Thank you guys.
Well, we knew we weren't gonna be here next time,
That's right,
so.
we're not.
Okay, while they are passing around the cake, well, let's give them a couple of minutes, I think.
Otherwise, I can undo the.
Public hearing? Yeah, well, we can wait. It's
That's
okay.
nice.
Need help?
We'll be good, thank you though.
I think George may be nice to you and give you a picture.
Oh,
George, did you
I
hear
got 'em sitting
Eileen would
there,
like a
Abby.
picture of it?
I watched them already. Oh, I see.
oh, I do have.
Awfully fancy, don't they?
Yes.
Okay, well, let's start with the roll call.
Okay. Commissioner Paulson,
Here.
Hubbard,
Here.
Farrar,
Here,
Fritiger,
Here.
Ramsey,
Here.
and Murray.
Here.
6 present.
all right, so the next item on the list is the minutes, approval of the minutes.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor of approval of the minutes say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Anyone opposed? Motion passes. So it's not 7:05
Can we-
yet, so,
Let's move to number 8.
okay, let's move to number 8. Set a public hearing date for a plan development district, general implementation plan, GIP amendment to add hotel as a conditional use for a lot 1 of the Airport Road Business Park at 3055 Deming Way.
I move to set a public hearing for 7:05 PM on Tuesday, June 25th.
Second.
Any questions or discussion? All those in favor of the motion to set a public hearing date as proposed here, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So the
Eileen,
motion
will we
passes.
see I know that the meeting included a kind of a draft site plan, but will we go through concept review before the public hearing on the use, or should we wait till the public
Probably
hearing?
wait till the public hearing.
Okay.
Or we could try to do that on the 11th, but maybe it's better to do it as part of the public
Okay.
hearing to say, hey, this is what we're, then there's the notification to everybody and. Want to try to do number 2?
Okay, number 2. Well, it is actually 7:05 now, isn't it?
I have
Yes,
some
right,
before,
storage.
mine's-
It's 7:05
Right,
here.
that's probably the actual one.
Okay, well, it's a 7:05 now, and I'm going to open the public hearing part of comprehensive plan update, and that local government includes utilities, facilities, services, intergovernment cooperation, and implementation. Anybody who wants to speak on the comprehensive plan update? Anybody wants to speak? Okay, I'm going to close that part of the public hearing, and we move on to the item number 2.
Thank you.
Well, this is the design review. No, this is the, item number 2 is
The shed.
specific implementation plan, SIP modification to allow a shed for James and Joyce Hinrichs, 2623 Sand Pearl Trail.
And you have a copy at your, place of the proposed shed, what it looks like in it. Yeah, that's the house,
Yeah.
lot 27, and it was existing before the neighborhood was created around it. It's a acre-and-a-half lot, and, so my recommendation, and the covenant's gonna apply, my recommendation is approval as an SIP modification, but.
Wait.
I'll move approval as a minor SIP.
A second.
Okay, let's have some discussion here
Quick
now.
question.
Have you looked at the picture of the shed? It looks good.
Yeah.
So do you know any reason that it's narrower at the back and larger in the front? There's about 14 inches difference.
The lot?
No, just the shed, but I guess it isn't really that important, but I just wondered why that was. So any questions about the shed?
I just, a question why, when the subdivision was platted, the covenants prohibited accessory buildings. Does anyone remember why that was?
I think that that's fairly standard for Viridian, they don't, a lot of times in their covenants. We might today push back against that, but, this was,
Oh, that's a Viridian, yeah.
yeah, a little while ago, and a lot of neighborhoods, I think newer ones don't necessarily. Again, you might push back against that now, also against things like no clotheslines. I don't know if this one has that, but we see that sometimes, so,
Was it true in the community of Bishop's Bay as well?
okay.
Any other questions or comments? I think seems pretty straightforward, doesn't it? Well, if there are no other questions or comments, all those in favor of the motion to approve the SIP modification to allow a shed for James and Joyce Hendricks, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Well, the motion passed, so you can have a cake now. There's a lot of it there, so. Start the celebration right here, right now, so. All right,
I'd like to wish Eileen a happy retirement.
Oh, isn't that nice?
All right.
Thank you.
I know she's been here as long as I've been here.
Just about,
Wow.
yeah.
Well, she does like you guys, both of you, by the way. so. All right. And now we move on to item number 3, one of our favorite grocery stores around here. It is the design review for exterior modifications of Willie Street Co-op, 6825 University Avenue. And Anna is here in case you have any questions about it, so.
You do.
Must have this one, I think.
So, I think I looked at the details, and what they're proposing does looks very nice. So it's better than what was there before. And yes, Mark, you want to?
Yeah, so I've been working with the applicant on the aesthetic improvements at the southeast corner of the building. They've been really nice to work with. They've been very responsive to concerns that we had. There was a neighbor that had a question about or concern about the appearance, and they've been very responsive and very proactive, I would add, to dress up the back corner of the building. And they are here to answer any questions you have. The submittal is pretty clear in terms of what they are planning. It's a variety of screening and dumpster placement in the storage building. They're going to replace the metal building that's there. And so our staff recommendation is to approve the site modifications
So just it's the fencing and the dumpster, kind of screening
in the storage building.
in the storage building. And they're cleaning up, yeah. Yeah, it all looks good.
Any questions or comments?
I would move approval.
Okay, need a second.
Second.
Okay, now any further questions or comments, or any questions for Anna? Well, they come all the way from Willie Street Co-op, so. Well, I guess everybody seemed to be happy with it, right? Yeah, I think it will be a good improvement. It will make that place look really good. So, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Wow. Anna, you can have a cake too, so. Okay, we move on to item number 3 now, item number 4.
And Abby has this one.
Specific implementation
Just ate some
plan,
cake, so.
modification to eliminate excess parking requirement, Marriott 1313 John Q. Hammonds Drive. Abby, it is, you can see most of the time that parking lot, I have seen it many, many times, it's lying empty. Every once in a while, you can have, some people parking there, but it's a big lot and not being used, so go ahead. Abby.
Yeah, there are a few trailers that I've seen parked there. I've never really been out there during the day when I've seen that overflow lot being used. I don't really have anything to add beyond what was in the staff comments, except that I did reach out to Julie Peterman, who is our tourism director, and she's the liaison between the city and the hotels. And she checked with the management staff at the Marriott, and they said that this would slightly affect them one time per year, but they weren't overly concerned with the change. So our tourism department didn't have any concerns with it. I think it's a great opportunity for an infill development site. There may be, that one time per year that it's inconvenient, but people will find somewhere to park and they may have to walk a little further. But I think it's a great
Bye-bye, Anna. So, and you also had a good suggestion that whoever takes the property, that they should try to make an arrangement with them to use the.
Cross easement.
Yeah,
Easement.
It's a good
cross
idea.
easement, yeah. I
Move-
think I like that idea a lot, so.
Are you recommending conditioning the approval on a cross
I
easement?
suggested it. I kind of wanted to get the plan commission's feedback. I'm not sure how it would work from the two private property owners negotiating.
We'd have to see when the land development for the other
Right,
comes in,
yeah, yep. So I'm thinking, our recommendation was approval as a minor SIP modification, but I think it would also be prudent to have this information passed along to the buyer of the new property so that, their surface parking lot, assuming that they have one when that property develops, there could be some arrangement between the two that they could work for overflow parking. It would especially be convenient if the new building is, say, an office use and the hotel has a wedding one night and they need it for the evening, then that would work really well. Or if the
Yeah.
new building is a residential use and has more demand in the evenings and on the weekends, that might help for a convention. So there might be some opportunities there.
It seems to me that the hotel has a business interest in seeing that their parking needs are accommodated, whether it's working out something with this new development or another nearby service lot, so.
So.
Recommend approval as a minor SIP modification.
Second?
Second. Abby, do they have actually a data, the Marriott people, that how often there's the overflow, that they use it? Oh, okay, all right, please come to the mic here. so-
Microphone?
Right up here.
Right
You
here.
come up here to the microphone?
Identify yourself and,
Actually, it's my first time in this room, so I'm Josh, I'm the GM of the property, and the day you're talking about is in May. It's the MGNE shareholder luncheon.
Oh.
Yeah, it's big. And so I have options to shuttle my staff in from a satellite parking lot, and it literally is 40 minutes long. So that's the big one. The other parking concerns, they coincide well because when I have these large events, so say ETC has their holiday party, well, it's December in Middleton, hotel's not that busy, right? So we have plenty of spots. And then I've consulted with, I've started to research valet parking options to where we can facilitate and condense spaces and stack cars and that kind of thing without any issue with emergency egress or all that, of course. And we're a fan of it. So I think we'll be able to navigate through that one day. But there's really, it's, you know, like I said with my ownership group, we've built the church for Easter Sunday.
Yeah.
And I don't really need it. I don't. So if something could go, whatever it is, like you mentioned, office space with vacant lots on the weekend, that's when the holiday parties are. So I can certainly work with them. And even Cowboy Jack's was the second idea. They have got a ton of parking spots over
They
there.
have a ton of,
Yeah, they're like more than they need. I can't.
but Gialamas has a lot of those offices over there that are empty on weekends.
Well, oh yeah. So the weekends are pretty easy, and we've got good relationships in the neighborhood with all those folks, and we're in good contact. It's the rare midweek piece that I'd have to deal with, and I'm comfortable in doing so.
So you don't see any issues then?
No.
Okay.
No.
I think this is a perfect example of why excessive parking requirements, right? And I'm sorry to beat a dead horse, but these excessive parking requirements just inhibit development and drive up the cost. And
Well, what was really interesting in the research is in 1989, it looked like when John Q. Hammons was proposing the Marriott, he had a note on his plan set saying that he thought that the parking within the main portion was sufficient based on his experience at his other hotels. But he would provide this other option across the street just in case. So even in 89,
It's a large footprint.
Yeah.
In my entire experience, I've never had 896 parking spots. So that's for me to deal with. But also, like to your point, 1989, all my airport traffic didn't have Uber and Lyft. Sure, there were taxis, but you know the rideshare function has decreased the parking lot demand on my property.
which part of the lot is it that you're?
It's actually across the street
It's
from
the
John
one
Q.
across the
Hammond's,
street. Got
right?
it.
So it's to my west, a 4-acre isolated lot.
Yep.
And the containers that you talked about, they're gonna go away by September because I'm undergoing the renovation. So it's nice to have, it's convenient, but I'll be up to like 30 containers by next week because we're right in the middle of the peak of the construction, so all that'll
That's what
disappear.
That's
Yeah.
what the trailers are for? Okay.
Yeah, I got 8 more today. It'll be different tonight when you drive home if you go by my place.
And also, I think this parking lot was added afterwards. Is that not true?
It was, in 1989, in our defense, we had never had a convention center before,
Right.
so we
Yeah.
said, well, what do we do?
We don't know.
And that's why we asked them to have that parking lot held in abeyance, not created yet, but held. And then in 93, we must have determined, and I don't even remember it, determined that it was needed based on the experience, so that's when they built it. So, but
Okay.
for all the reasons that you mentioned,
Sure.
Okay, so, all right.
Here for the whole thing.
I was,
Well, and of the entire 4-acre parcel, only half of it's even parking lot.
Yeah.
So the rest is
Yeah,
just unused,
right.
is
It's unused.
prairie land, right?
Is it, yeah. I know this is way getting ahead of ourselves, but would that prairie be a good spot for additional stormwater storage in that area?
The storage for my use?
No, yeah, stormwater storage, just, the city might have to, yeah. Is it up a little higher? It's
Yeah.
up, okay, yeah.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm dealing with water trespassing from my property, so I'm familiar with the,
Yeah.
right.
Okay, any other questions? Any other comments? Okay, all those in favor of the motion to approve the SIP modification to eliminate the access parking requirement at Marriott 1313 John Q. Hammons Drive, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So the motion passes unanimously. All right, go and celebrate.
Thank you. I'll skip the cake, but I will leave, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. The less parking, the better.
Well, it is something I have to manage, like I forget about it.
It doesn't add to the tax base.
no, it does not add to it.
Yeah, I have seen just lying empty for years, so, okay.
Texas is below where I'm responsible, so. Thank you all.
Okay, item number 5, specific implementation plan modification to allow screening, James and K, 5261 Anna Lane.
Yeah, he's not here, the applicant's not here, but if you look on the screen, I can give you a little overview. So, where you see the low trees, the bushes next to the grass, that is essentially what they wish to, there used to be mature trees, and in your packet, I had a street view image that showed
But
the
that's the
original.
example of Maywood and,
Yeah, well, right, but
And-
this right here is what the appearance was previously.
okay,
And if you go back up again, Abby, so that's what was there. And what's there now, that these trees had to be removed, and he said the city removed them because they were encroaching into the right-of-way. So they were replaced with these smaller trees, but now they have a sight line towards the parking lot across the street. So he wishes to use the screening, I think there's 6 sections between the arborvitae to provide screening on a temporary basis. So our staff recommendation is to allow the screening, but to have a sunset of 5 years, basically.
so what does this picture show here? Is that,
So he provided this picture showing that it was similar concept for, on Maywood, this is at the
Okay.
corner of Maywood and Park Lawn.
okay,
Yeah, I always drove by and wondered why there were chunks. That's just temporary screening.
No, in this case, I wouldn't say I didn't issue that was not intended to be temporary. I think that was just their design that they wanted. I'm not sure why these people did that. This has no bearing on
Yeah, okay.
the other one. It was
Yeah.
just the applicant submitted that as an
So-
example.
Can you remind us why or where in our ordinance
It's good, leave it there.
that the screening can't be permanent? Is it because the design is that we want it to be trees?
Well, it could be a permanent. I wouldn't recommend that this material be a permanent material, especially in a PDD.
Okay.
This is meant to be a temporary item that I think he chose the color to be, to blend in with the green that was there. It's very hard to see, but if you look at the dash lines, there's
Yeah.
actually a little reddish dashes.
And that's because if it was permanent, we'd want something more like a fence.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
More design.
And so I was tempted to approve this administratively, and I thought, there might be people complaining about this, wondering what's going on with the material. And since it's a PDD, Eileen and I talked about it and thought it was best to bring it here.
Well, I'll
So
move,
is this screening, is this a fabric screen then?
Yeah.
so I'm gonna move to allow the installation of the screening with the understanding it'd be removed within 5 years.
need a second?
Second.
Okay, discussion.
My only concern with fabric is twofold. Number one, it's gonna fade in the sun, and number two, it's gonna sag.
Yeah.
So, it may look good for the first 6 months, winter comes, and it's not gonna come out next spring looking too good.
Is there a way we could condition the approval on, I'd hate to put more, no, I'd hate to put
Mark's
more
gonna go
staff
over-
time to go and
I was gonna
inspect,
say
but
Mark's gonna go over that.
could we have a condition that if neighbors complain, we can order them to maintain it at the installed quality, installed appearance?
I think that makes sense.
And I think actually, and particularly indicating concern about
Sagging and-
discoloration and sagging.
Yeah, you don't want it to
Or
look
do a
shabby,
two-year
I know.
approval, Subject to a renewal. That's-
Yeah.
Or what about, I'm thinking of our city banners and, those of course catch a lot of wind because they're up in the air, but what about like rips or tears? Would that be another thing that you'd wanna think about?
Could maybe do a 2-year approval and then have an extension if they're still in good shape or require a new application.
I would prefer to just stick with the 5 years, but say that a property owner shall maintain the screening at initial conditions, to its initial,
Installed appearance.
to its installed appearance.
Okay, do you agree with that modified?
Sure.
Okay. All right, so any further discussion? Okay, all those favor of the motion as modified now say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So the motion passes. We are on to item number 6.
Mayor, can I ask that you move to item number 7 because there's somebody else who may be joining us for number 6? And he
Oh,
is going to
okay.
arrive around 7:30.
Okay.
I'm not just referring to you, Jim, someone else, yeah. Or
Item
she, I
number
meant.
7,
Yeah.
tax incremental financing district 3, cost for monitoring north and south forks of Pheasant Branch Creek.
And I didn't include this in the comments, but the reason, I support this and recommend that you support it. The reason we know how effective, for instance, the Confluence Pond has been is because of the continual monitoring of by USGS. So it's very valuable information and very important for the quality of our,
Yeah, we'll do it every year.
yep.
Yeah.
And this is water quality monitoring. This is different than the gauge station at,
I think it.
or is it all in the
It
same
is-
station?
They're all the same.
Parameters,
all the
yeah.
same gauge.
So it's both flow and
Monitoring,
temperature and
yeah.
gauge, yeah.
It's very.
Every time there's a rainfall event, I'm watching that gauge.
Yeah.
Probably everybody else in the
I know.
cameras and, yeah.
But, you know, anyway, so it's important information.
So I would move or recommend approval to the common council.
Second?
Any questions or comments? I think it's really a good deal because the USGS pays half of it,
Or
so.
they pay, a fourth of it or something.
Fourth of
yeah.
it?
10,000, I think.
Yeah,
Oh,
but it's
okay,
still
yeah.
really critical for us.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Well, otherwise, the motion is to approve the TIF financing for monitoring north and south fork of Pheasant Branch Creek Road. Pheasant Branch Creek, say aye.
Aye.
All right.
Anyone opposed? So the motion passes. Now, we already set the public hearing date, so we are left with item number 6 now, so,
Or
Okay.
9.
Or 9.
or 9, okay. Let's move on to 9.
And I apologize that I didn't have this in your packet, I just got it done today, but this is only one part of the local government, proposed section. This is, the intergovernmental agreement area, or intergovernmental cooperation. And this, is primarily from, the things are either from our last plan, our current one, or the FUDA plan. So a draft vision statement just regarding the intergovernmental cooperation segment of what we're gonna call the local government one, because we'll still have utilities and facilities and services. But, just wanted to start somewhere and get it on paper, so you don't have to do anything with it, you can just take it for the next time. These are either from the 2006 comp plan or, and they added the Wanakee School District because the community visual stay is in the Wanakee School District.
So Eileen, with regard to the FUDA study, do we want to have a statement in there indicating that our future land use map in the other chapter, I'm not even sure the right word, partially, fully incorporates the recommendations of that strategy report? Because right now this is process, but I wonder if we want to strengthen the language to say that we're, you know, we did this FUDA study, and so we're committed to staying, and we have these intergovernmental agreements, so it's not just that we're gonna work, but we, obviously, we intend to honor those and work with those,
Maintain the, okay,
unless, I mean, unless something radically changes, but
sure.
But we
So
do,
strengthen that part,
so but
make
we-
it more substantive and not just procedural,
okay.
I think, right? I mean, because the FUDA study and the intergovernmental agreement really outline our future growth areas,
Oh, absolutely.
right? And so those will be shown in the future land use map, and those are pretty, I mean, nothing's fixed for all time, but they're pretty strong.
Yep, that's true.
so.
And then, do we want to talk about extending that intergovernmental agreement, because it ends in
2029.
29, okay, we have time.
And we have other agreements that we have with the town of Middleton and the city of Madison and town of Westport.
We had talked about, I don't know, about a year ago about the timeline for starting those negotiations. And where are we? We gave any more thought to
That
that?
might be something that we could also discuss under item number 6. So more substantive, not just procedural, and just strengthen it regarding the intergovernmental agreements and the,
So we
I
don't
mean,
need.
we don't want to make it excessively long, but we are cooperating with Madison on particular stormwater issues on the Madison
We have on
buying.
transportation, Pleasant View Road.
We participate with CARPC, we
Yep.
do all the sustainability grants with all the, I mean, so we're actually doing a lot of things, so maybe
Maybe just,
toot our own horn a little bit
all
about
right,
how good of a neighbor we are.
okay.
And
Since we're the good.
Well, especially now, what they are doing for the stormwater. I mean, Madison is doing a lot.
Right.
And we are working with the others as well, but mainly with Madison.
Right.
We are hoping to work with Springfield, and, you know, that's
Yeah.
very essential, because stormwater is very, very
Oh,
important.
yeah, and I did mention stormwater, but you're right,
Yeah.
we should,
I think
things
listing
we're
all the
doing.
agencies we partner with, whether it's MAMSWAP or MMSD or,
and I think what we would do, if it's okay with you, but we, I mean, obviously can direct us otherwise, but I would put that in the background information.
Okay.
with all the things we've done, because
okay,
there is a lot, but we could then reference it in here to say, see, you know, the, I really think it should be in here, and then I can add it out, absolutely.
As long as we can, we can make it so that people can link to it and.
yeah.
As David said, we want to make this something that people can go online.
Oh, right.
and-
Well, what I'll do is maybe I'll write it out, and then we'll see if it, rather have a background.
I mean, the other reason to strengthen it is part of our future growth plan, right, that we're telling our citizens that we want high-quality urban infill development as part of a regional cooperation strategy with CARPC, with the food study, with Springfield, so that we're not expanding
Into,
into prime farmland or into environmental corridors.
right, exactly. Okay, I'll work on it. Maybe it could be on the agenda for next time. The 11th.
Eileen, your items under the draft vision statement mentions collaborating with other governmental units to improve services and efficiencies. Seems like, shouldn't we also say to improve planning as well as services and efficiencies?
Yeah, good point.
And then, I guess a minor point under item 3, where it references working with the Wanakee School District for the Community of Bishops Bay projects. I would just say Community of Bishops Bay, period, or Community of Bishops Bay area.
Okay,
It's a construction project,
you're right,
but
you're right. Area. Those are good suggestions.
I think it does look pretty good.
7:30.
Yeah,
There is a long list of stuff, so it'll be good to, I do have it in the other one, and I can add it. Maybe I'll even get it out before the I know, but you guys are all gonna help me clean my office, right? So I bet you each signed up for a 2-hour block. Abby's right.
I didn't
after
see
you,
that
no,
come.
I'm just kidding.
So,
See that sign-up sheet?
Oh, you're signed up.
yeah, I think we should highlight what we're doing with Madison.
Oh, yeah,
because
and, yeah,
there is a-
all of our surroundings.
There is a lot happening now. Well, Madison is big, well, they're great partners, so.
Mhm. And we do have, as you pointed out, I think we do have many layers of cooperation with the county, all that, and DNR and
Mhm.
FEMA and
Yep.
so, yeah, lots of different things.
So, any more on this item? Does anybody want to add, or any other suggestions?
There'll be another
Another hit.
chance to add stuff when I have it revised.
Yeah.
Thanks for the feedback.
Okay, now we are on to the one remaining item, right?
I'm not done yet.
So Mark, can we?
Sure.
Are you still waiting for somebody, or that's?
Nope, we're
it?
good. They, well, they had said they weren't gonna try and come. It was someone from Yahara Materials, the operator of the quarry. So.
Okay, so we are on to item number 6.
Right.
Projects affecting cities, intergovernment agreement with the town of Springfield, planned expansion of mine holes, quarry, and request to modify reclamation plan, and Dane County planned acquisition of acre farm and the airport master plan. There are 3 things which somehow affect the our cooperative things.
So I can give a little background, Mayor. So we've done project updates over the last few months at various meetings. And so we were talking about this at the staff level, and I suggested maybe this would be a good time, given that there's these 3 projects that are getting heightened public interest in the community.
Yeah.
This might be a good time to brief the Plan Commission on these projects. If you can go, please, to the packet, we'll walk through the slides first. At your place is this land use map, which we'll get back to. And then I have some slides on in the packet that I thought would be good to go through first.
Okay.
And there's also a typo in my staff comments. I remember now, when I was editing this, that I forgot to fix the typo, so I'll get to that in a moment. It had to do with the airport. So this first slide was the existing plans. This is just an existing air photo showing an officially mapped corridor called Bellefontaine Boulevard going from southwest at Schneider Road, Parmenter Street, northeast to the intersection of Highway Q and Onken Road. And also there was the idea of having a connection southeast into the Laufenberg Farm, and ideally connecting into Community of Bishops Bay, which T-Wall had said they would be willing to accommodate, but that's not in writing.
Of the road?
Of a road, right. So the idea, this was the concept for a road network as adopted by official, which we adopted on an official map. So it's part of our official map, about 10 years ago now. Next slide, please.
Can I
Sure.
ask a procedural question?
Sure.
Was this official map transmitted to the county planning department to update the county master plan?
I don't have record of that. I don't know.
Because the state official mapping statutes are really obscure. They have a lot of strange things, but
I would guess the answer.
counties are supposed to amend their comprehensive plan to reflect a municipal official map for mapping of parkland and things like that. But
So you haven't seen that in that one, is that what you're saying?
I think it's unlikely that we did, but I don't know.
Okay. Okay.
It's unlikely that we
But
have
the
done that.
question is, should it be done then?
it doesn't prohibit the county from doing anything.
Oh,
It's just
okay.
a procedural issue that they should amend their plan.
But it does provide information to
little
the
background.
citizens. I mean, that is,
Right.
Well, it is on our official map, so people.
It's on ours.
We went through the
Oh,
process.
okay,
It's not that
okay,
we didn't, it's
okay.
just that we maybe didn't do that step. and
okay,
I
okay,
don't
all
remember
right.
ever doing it.
Yeah, and I'm not sure that,
Well, there's-
I'm not sure I ever knew that we were supposed to do that.
Well, there's nothing in the state law that says the city is supposed to do it. It just says that the county is supposed to amend its comprehensive plan to reflect municipal master plans to the extent that they impact.
Okay.
Good to know. This map also showed the concept. It's okay. The concept of a trail network. We'll get back to it. There's very faintly below the solid purple line. You can see a dash line, and that was intended to convey what's in our adopted bike plan. But we'll see that in another map here shortly. So if we can go to the next slide, please. This is our adopted intergovernmental agreement with the town of Springfield from 2004.
2003, I think.
3. And what I did here is I highlighted at the bottom in red the acre, quarry, and airport properties. The airport actually doesn't go into the town of Springfield, but the reason I put that square down there was to show that that's, depending on the outcome of the master plan, we may be interested in acquiring some land in the town of Springfield. But that's a question mark. That's not a specific proposal. Also on this map, what you'll see is by the quarry. I did this in a hurry last Friday, so or Thursday, whenever it was. I didn't outline the quarry exactly. You'll see another map showing that. But the blue is meant to symbolize most of the quarry, and then the red below it is an addition. I think that's 40 acres, right, Jim? That's adjacent to what's the name of the subdivision? The Shady, or Shamrock.
Glen.
Yeah, and that's where there's some interest by neighbors about what's going on with that specific square. So that's why I highlighted it separately. Next slide, please.
Wait. So,
Oh.
while we're here, the existing urban service area boundary from Carpsey, can you just walk us through where that is?
It doesn't even take our entire boundary into consideration. It doesn't have the Graber Pond area in
Okay.
it, or the Ann Voss property. So we have not added anything that's not already developed, because Carpsey really has been pretty strict. When we brought in the Municipal Operations Center, we tried to get the rest of the land in, along Graber and along Parmenter. I said, can't we just say that we'll meet all of the requirements and show you what our planning is? And they said, no, you really have to have a plan.
So the current urban service area boundaries by CARPC are the 2003 vintage boundaries, which they have not expanded. That's a different issue, but they've not
No, I
expanded
think
those
the
since 2003.
CARPC
We
did
have added to it, since that time, we added the Misty Valley area. So
Okay.
we added the Heisey Farm, and we added the Hidden Oaks.
Bishop Bay.
And we added Bishop's Bay, we added the
Yep.
Hidden Oaks
Right, okay.
subdivision. So we have added to it, but we haven't added, there's nothing that's in the city that's not developed yet, that's in the urban service area also, other than Tribeca, for instance, which has been in there for a long time, and then the rest of Community Bishop's Bay, so.
We probably should explain this map a little bit too, maybe area A, B, and C.
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to do that.
Why don't
The intergovernmental agreement map with the town of Springfield identifies 3 different areas. Area A was an area that was identified as our initial growth area. I think, if I remember correctly, it's about 640 acres. Of that, I think with the Conservancy and now this purchase by Acre and the development of Misty Valley, I think we still have close to 400 acres left. Maybe it's only about 350. I didn't, again, add it up exactly.
And that's west of High Road up to Greenbrier and
It's, there's both, you're right. What's left is west of,
west of High.
Where the hand is, that's the Misty Valley, Middleton Ridge
Right, right,
subdivision.
right.
And south of that is the Ziegler Farm, that's pretty small. West of that is Graber Pond, and west of that, of course, is, I don't know who the owner is now.
That's,
Is that? well,
that's
I
not
thought-
Laufenberg's farm, that's,
no, Laughlin.
Laufenberg's
is on the
farm is
east.
more close to Highway Q and right north of the Misty Valley, north of North Lake.
And then between High Road and Pheasant Branch Road are basically acres of acres.
And then, so
you were
that's,
waiting for that one.
yeah, right, that's Area A. And then, and what we say in our intergovernmental agreement is that we would, essentially follow our comp plan, and it would be primarily single-family, although there could be also multifamily and commercial, I think, areas. And then Area B, which is just north of the airport, that is shown as long-term preservation for environmental corridor because it's got some environmentally sensitive land. Area C then is the area that we said in the agreement and the map, that once Area A is substantially complete, we could move into Area C. And this agreement was originally for 20 years, I guess it was 2004 when we officially signed it. We had a couple years of negotiation, pretty good, pretty cooperative negotiation. And then it was amended probably 10 years ago, I think it was before you got here, Abby, to include another 5 years, so it goes till 2029 right now. And one of the things I want to say is, when we did the FUTA process, we had to make a determination, or just an assumption, how much of our growth in the future would be accommodated by the community of Bishop's Bay, for instance, because that's a very large area with over 2,400 housing units in the city. We made an assumption with the CARPC staff and their consulting staff, that we would estimate that about 70% of our growth would be in community of Bishop's Bay. And so, leaving about 30%. I haven't recalculated the numbers, but up until a few years ago and until the recession, we had about 100 multifamily units a year, and about 60 to 65 single-family units a year. And even if we bump that up maybe to 200 multifamily and kept it at 65 single-family, or maybe even 70, we still have a pretty substantial growth area within the town of Springfield. I don't have the exact numbers, but I also used, for utility planning purposes, an assumption that the density would be similar to Misty Valley, which is, I think, about 4 to 5 units gross per acre with single-family and multifamily. Maybe it's gonna have to be higher. I don't know, that's something that you all have to decide. But if you compare that, for instance, North Lake is about 1.72 units per acre.
Yeah, that's pretty
So,
low, so.
Yeah, anyway.
And we should, I'm sorry, I was gonna say introduce 2 people who are here. I
Yes,
should have
I was
started
just
with
going
this.
to ask,
Yeah.
Jim Pulvermacher, chairman of the town of Springfield, and I assume that's Dan?
Art Meinholz.
Oh, okay. Art Meinholz.
Of
okay.
Meinholz Quarry. No.
Ouch.
Oh, and I didn't,
No,
there's a lot of mine holds.
that same tree, different branch.
Well, Jim and Art,
actually a
welcome
nice
you to
pun in
the
Jersey.
Middleton Plan Commission meeting here, so.
And I'm sorry,
Mine holds electric, mine
And
holds
thank you, Mark.
excavating, mine
Yeah.
holds-
So I had a question for you that, you said that area be close to the airport if it's, reserved as a wetland, so then
It's reserved as environmental corridor.
environmental, so then could we, if we want to do anything to the airport, could we expand or do anything to it if it's environmental corridor?
We would have to look at the underlying environmental resources. It's been a while and I can't remember exactly, but I know that was identified actually by, I think, the town of Springfield's consultants. Oh, Jim might know too.
Right, well, that,
Jim, could you come to the mic,
Otherwise,
please?
I'll just
Or
get you the mic.
Take the mic to, yeah, whatever you like. so.
Portable, sweet. Does it work too? Okay.
Just for you, Jim.
That green area you'll see in there, that's your water recharge area for your city. And so it kind of runs along the Highway 12 corridor, but where it says quarry there, basically to the north, if you look in the Carp Sea and stuff plans, that's the major water recharge into the Mount Sinai aquifer that you guys drink from. So that's why when we originally talked about that, there was really no desire to build in that corridor, because that's really what feeds the water into it. Because most of the water, if I'm going by memory, but most of the water in this area all travels in the southeastern direction. So that's why that's
Direction of
your
the
water recharge for your wells, and that's why when we looked at that, we didn't really, you've got the Dorn Creek corridor and everything else in there, and so if it was just agreed back in the day that you'd stay out of that area for now. And at your rate of growth that you were doing, you thought that, areas A and C was pretty much gonna take care of that, so.
So that means so we may be restricted by this, anything we can do with the airport then? Or not?
Well, this is a planning, this is a very top-level planning process that led to the intergovernmental agreement. One of the reasons we bought the airport, there were several reasons, but one of them was to have that be a buffer to this area, to the farmland and to this environmental area. Instead of having a business park, which was proposed at the time, which would have had roads and sewers leading up to this boundary. So, excuse me. So I think it's, the master plan for the airport, which I'm going to get into in a moment, will assess needs and go through a comprehensive process to determine what the options are and for the airport. We'll get into that.
And can I just add one quick thing, Mark, sorry?
Yep.
Well, I remember the Plan Commission, when talking about sewer service in this area and past the airport,
That's a good point.
they said, because the Plan Commission recommended to the Public Works at the time, and it was probably sometime in the 90s, maybe the mid-90s.
Oh, wow.
I can find it probably in the minutes. The Plan Commission said, we want to send a message 50 years into the future that we don't want that farmland that's, pretty, some of the most important farmland
Best.
in the area or in the country or whatever. We don't want that developed, so we really want that sewer stuff to pull back and not to serve it. And so that's part of the decisions that Mark was talking about, and that's reflected in this plan, that it's agricultural preservation primarily.
So is that how you feel still, Jim and Art, or?
Yeah, we have no issue with it. I was invited here tonight, we just wanted to touch base with you. I'm the new chair. Don Hoffman is retired. He had 26 years in, and he's had enough beatings, so now it's my turn. So we just wanted to touch base with you. A couple of things. I notified Mark just in case that he hadn't received any notification about, the change of the boundaries for the Mineholz quarry, and then you guys were kind enough to put, Dan Drazen, one of our supervisors, on your advisory committee on the airport. And I just, I appreciate being able to give input in the planning stage of it, and hopefully, once your future growth plan is put together, that we'll have an opportunity as a town to address it. I've attended the 2 meetings you've had so far, and it's been interesting. I'll leave it at that.
In the
So,
airport, you mean?
I really appreciate your
airport,
coming
yes.
and providing this input. That's really very much appreciated.
no, and to be honest with you, the town of Springfield values our relationship with the city of Middleton. I went to high school in Middleton, so did Art, so did everybody on the board. And so, you know, we've been good neighbors, we've gotten along well. I've got a 20-year agreement with you. I don't have any agreement right now with the Village of Wanakee. They're kind of gung-ho go, so that's one of my things when I became chair that I need to take care of. But right now, I'm dealing with an airport and a quarry and some other issues. But when I get time, I got to go over and talk to my neighbors to the east, so. But I thought we'd stop and talk to you. I don't know, do you want to,
We're gonna get to some more slides, and maybe that would be a
That's
good time
fine.
to talk.
But what you're saying is we're better than Wanakee.
yeah,
That's something that brings us all together.
a feather in your hat, how's that?
Any other questions on this map? Because there's a few more slides.
No, go ahead. Go to the next slide.
Thank you. So this is, maybe Eileen or Abby could talk about this. This is the FUTA process that you went through in 2012, 2013?
2013, well, 2012, but finished in January 2013. You know, there was a lot of public outreach to come to the preferred option, and this is the compact option. And, you know, the FUTA plan has
Compact development, you mean?
compact development,
Yeah.
yeah, sorry. And Abby, you step in if you want to add anything, but basically this is showing that we really have a lot of areas for infill and redevelopment that can help it, I think as Kurt, you were saying, accommodate a lot of our growth within the city. And that is what we've been doing over the last 20 years too, infilling and redeveloping. But it also shows our growth areas, Community Bishops Bay, and then the area to the north, so. Mark, is that
The
kind of thing?
purple, the orange, by the way, is intended to show what we have officially mapped as the North Mendota Parkway corridor. The reason it gets so wide is because there wasn't agreement as to exactly where it should go if it's ever built. It generally follows Highway K west of Q, and then east of Q, it dips south of K and follows the creek to avoid the houses and a few businesses that are along K. That's what that orange outline area is.
Yeah, we went through several options. I guess this was the best we could find, yes.
Is FUTA binding on CARPC for urban service area extensions? I never understood how that fit in with their
Yeah,
area-wide water quality management plan, because this seems to suggest that Wanakee needs to be somewhat constrained in their growing south and west, which is why you need an intergovernmental agreement with them, because they're, at the rate they're going, the southern tip of Wanakee will soon be the northern tip of Middleton. I mean, maybe 20, 30 years,
Yeah.
It's happening.
but it's
It's
not a
happening, yeah.
compact urban form.
but I think that they, you know, one of the things when a community brings in an urban service area amendment request, one of the things that hopefully they will look at is what does the FUTA plan say? And one of the things we would reference is, here's the FUTA plan, here's our comp plan. So, I don't know. And I don't know frankly how staff will treat it going forward, but want to keep fully participating in it.
Any questions on this slide? Okay, next one, Mark.
And then this is our adopted bicycle plan. Again, it shows, this actually shows Bellefontaine as well, the orange dashed line. That shows orange is on-street bicycle facilities, in other words, a bike lane. The green, the dashed greens were intended to be future shared use path, multi-use path connections. They don't necessarily have to be in those exact locations, but it was the idea of linkages and connectivity.
And one of those shows along the northern boundary of North Lake,
Yes.
connecting through to the existing conservancy.
Good point. That's so that's straddling the northern 10 feet of North Lake. All those lots have a 10-foot easement across them. for an access easement. The idea was that there would be a similar easement. I personally hope it would be wider in the future, just to have a wider linear corridor, to obtain that from the Laufenberg farm when that's ready to develop. The idea is to establish a shared use path connecting Draper Pond at Parmenter Street there, all the way through the Conservancy, the northern edge of the Conservancy, and then to Governor Nelson State Park through Bishop's Bay.
Well, but right now we proved without it. We proved as it is.
I'm sorry?
We proved that we gave the Laufenbergs
Right.
the agricultural use of
Right.
that land.
Right, right. So that's not something that's gonna happen in the short term, but it is something that we have in our adopted plans.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry if I missed this. Was the Laufenberg farm in our future growth area? I did
No,
not see
it
in
was, they had wanted to,
Town of Westport.
they wanted to have a
Westport.
different land use. And the Mark was asking that, let's ask them if they will give
No, right.
potential.
I forgot, that's not in our intergovernmental agreement with Springfield because it's in
And just for
Westport.
the record, it wasn't a different land use. They had just,
Yeah,
they were.
they
were
need the
continuing
rezoning
on
to
it.
exclusive ag for
Yeah.
the tax
Get the
credits.
Right, to get the tax credits
Okay,
because,
okay.
yeah. But it's the same land use. They just intend to have it be farmed. in
Any
the future.
questions on this slide? Okay, let's go to the next one, Mark.
So I think now it's going into, you can skip that. And then this is one more background slide. This was when the North Mendota Parkway discussions were active during the first 10 years of this decade, before that even. The result, this was a result, if you scroll down, was to map the natural resource areas. And so there you see the acre property was mapped to identify the southeast corner is contiguous to Fredericks Hill, and then what goes through the center of the property, it looks kind of like a face with two floppy ears.
Or a Y.
What's that?
Or a Y if you're less creative.
Or a Y. I'm creative. That's a drainage way, basically, that runs right through the farm. And one of the reasons why the county has been pursuing this land, which we're going to get to now, is because there's been quite a bit of agricultural runoff into the Conservancy. A lot of phosphorus and manure, sediment, silt, et cetera. And then you see the quarry parcel to the west there as well. So if you can go to the next slide. So now there's a few slides that reflect, I guess I did the quarry first. So we were notified a week or 10 days, well, maybe 2 weeks ago now, the county notified us about this filing of a revision to the reclamation plan for the Meinholz quarry. And they have given the city up to 2 weeks, May 31st, to respond, to provide comments, any comments we have. And I'm glad Jim and Art are here tonight because maybe they can tell us about their meeting last Tuesday. It sounds like you had a few people show up. And all I know is that from talking with you, Jim, is that you've asked the town, that the town board has asked the county to postpone a hearing on this matter. And then there's some, I put in the minutes from your meeting in December when this was discussed. And what else is in here? So minutes from that meeting. And then I think there was another, and here's the proposed new reclamation plan. So Jim, would you be willing to give us a quick update, what happened at the town, or what your position is?
Yeah, well, I think it was our December 18th meeting, Yahara had come in, and they had purchased, I don't think this one shows it, the one that Yahara provided you shows, but basically it would be in that yellow and red area, it would be in the southeast corner. If you go a little farther to the right there, just up, that 40 right there, up to the tree line. That was the last 40 that was purchased, and that, to the best of my knowledge, was owned by the Meinholz family yet, and they had, at one time, a couple of years ago, proposed to put some houses in there. And there was challenges because of the wood line is real steep slopes and stuff, and in order to get the density they wanted, it didn't fit properly. And to be honest, I know there at the planning commission meeting there was a number of residents that lived to the subdivisions to the east and probably to the south. They weren't really in favor of it. So in the meantime, to the best of my knowledge, then the Meinholz family sold that property to Meinholz LLC, which is Yahara Materials. So Yahara's, you know, they came in on December 18th just to ask us if we showed on our plan that that was in contiguous ownership in 1969, and we did. So we looked at the information they had and the information provided by the applicant, and with the recommendation of our attorney, we said that we felt it was contiguous ownership in 1969. Well, now they've come to do the entire acreage basically in the reclamation plan, so the neighbors, of course, to the east, on the east side of the property are upset, and they're challenging it, and they're saying they have, you know, we didn't follow our plan and stuff. So I have asked the county to stop processing the NRA 135 permit until we have a chance to gather knowledge and comments and legal opinions, and we're going to revisit it. But we're just in the process of getting that. Yahara's providing us some information. I've made requests of Dane County because even the town, Springfield voted 2 years ago to leave Dane County zoning, but the reclamation plans are still under the county's purview. And so that's where that's at. So I knew that the county had reached out, but you know, as soon as we had it, I had no clue that this reclamation plan was coming in really until probably about the same time you did. And I had received a phone call from Dane County, and they said that, you know, Yahara was planning on doing it. So when the formal application went out, then now I've got, I don't know, probably 60 to 100 people are not real happy with me. But I'm here tonight just to let you know about that, and then the two things I really wanted to talk to you about. I mean, if you have any comments for that, you can send them to Springfield and or to the county. You know, it's really not affecting your planning that I'm aware of. But again, if you had any comments or concerns, I know when the notification process comes out, when they do set up the public hearing at the county level, they normally only notify within 300 feet. And I promised we were going to go farther than that in the town of Springfield. So how far, do you want me to just notify you, or how far would you like notifications to go into Middleton? That's why I'm here tonight, just to be a good neighbor.
Well, because Misty Valley is southeast of the.
It's right there, actually, you can,
Yeah. I mean, some of those homeowners may be within 300 feet even.
Some will be, but yeah.
And I think that's why some of our city council people are hearing from the people who live there. Social media gets
Oh, yeah,
it's excited about these things.
So maybe you could describe the reclamation first, that what are they going to be doing there to reclaim that land?
Well,
And
go ahead,
before you
Mark.
do that, I just want to explain that there's some material at your place, which I emailed late this afternoon. It arrived about 4 o'clock. It came from Yahara Materials. And so this statement, this text, which doesn't have a title on it, was not prepared by the city or the town. This came from Yahara Materials, as did this map. And this map is a little bit different from what I had in the slides. And I gave you a copy too, Jim, so you.
I have it.
yeah.
And
Thank
is
you.
this material new as of today? This map? Have you seen this map before?
Well, I saw what the proposed reclamation plan, somebody brought a copy to our meeting, but we hadn't received one at the town level. Tuesday night, one of the residents brought us a copy.
Mark, that's this plan?
So what you're holding, Wayne, is the copy that we got a week and a half ago from the county, which is that's how I first became aware of this. And I think I went to Eileen and said, what do we do with this? And so we don't usually get something like this. This is obviously fairly unusual. And I called Dane County, and they went through and very much what Jim just said, explained the process. And there's some controversy about ownership and intent going back to the 60s. And, I don't think it's worth getting into all that here. But what I thought was interesting is, you know, I knew that people from seeing social media that there were starting to be some questions and concerns, and I thought, well, how does this relate to our land use planning, and how does this affect Middleton, and let's all get a better understanding, so.
Just to be
that's the
clear,
background.
because you read all these things, I live north enough that it shows up on the feed. You didn't have to change the zoning on the parcel.
No,
So it was already a lawfully existing, non-conforming use.
that is what we were, the information that we provided and we made our decisions with at the meeting, and our town attorney showed that the land was in contiguous ownership in 1969,
And so it preceded the zoning ordinance, so it's,
Right, it's one of those non-conforming sites. So the only thing there is one conditional use permit that I'm aware of that's active in the existing site, is they came and they asked for a conditional use permit in order to put a concrete plant in there. And I believe Treeweiler uses that, and they use that on DOT and City of Madison projects. And it's restricted for that. It can't be used for patios or homes or anything like that. It can only be used for, you know, basically for streets. So,
Yeah,
but that's the only conditional use permit. The rest of it, they fall under what's called non-conforming. And so we don't really have much for controls of it. The only thing that the county really has controls of too is the reclamation plan, is to make sure that they have, you know, they're following the reclamation. And basically what most reclamation plans do is they take it back to agricultural. Usually before it gets to that point, somebody will take and change it over to commercial. You know, that's just historically what I've seen, because even within the city here, you know, I'm thinking Northwestern Stone, you know, there used to be an asphalt plant and everything over there where Middleton Farmers Co-op was.
Yeah.
I mean, when I was a boy, I can remember driving by there, and now it's industrial park. So, you know, what'll happen 100 years from now, I don't know. But the reclamation plans typically take it back to an agricultural use.
And that's a good thing. I mean, that's,
I've seen sites that have been, you know, again, you know, I worked for Wingra Stone actually for 10 years, and so I know a little bit about the aggregate community. But, you know, some of the sites get put back. I know we always call it the town of Quarry, and that's the town of Vienna up there, but they have a number of sites that have been open through the years, and then, you know, it's usually a gravelly knoll, and they take it off, and when it's done, the farmer's got a flat field. And so that's just the way it goes. But this one is limestone, so, you know, there's blasting involved. If it was a sand and gravel operation, it probably wouldn't be as offensive to the neighbors. But
so does this mean that these people have valid concern that if they will be doing that stuff there especially in this southeast corner?
well, yeah, and I can't speak for your hair materials, they're not here. You know, normally when you change an NR 135 permit, most operators will add, like, if you got an existing 40, they'll do another 40 right next to it, but they're doing it all. So I don't know if that's just for long-term planning or they've got concerns. It is what it is.
Yeah.
So. But-
Okay, other questions?
A couple things that concern me. First of all, I think there are some questions about just the procedural aspects of what's happening. I think that do need to be looked at closely by the county, because I think they're taking a rather assertive stance in terms of their rights.
Who?
The
Yahara.
quarry.
Or,
Yeah. Secondly, as I look through the plan just from a quick purview, I don't see it being very responsive in terms of the actual ultimate reclamation plan. I think when I look at the state law and its requirements in terms of actual detailed phasing of the quarrying operation that's to occur, the ultimate land contours, the stormwater management on the site, I don't see any of that addressed. I see a map that shows one level final elevation for the whole site. To me, that's just not responsive in terms of what's actually being planned. So I definitely think we should register our concern with the county that this be thoroughly assessed.
And
Yes, correct.
we would have standing as a city to, if the NR 135 permit is expanded, to request a contested case hearing
Yes.
on that. Or certainly, I'm guessing some of the nearby landowners are gonna go that route anyway.
You mean to have a,
On the 135 permit, to have a contested case hearing before DNR, or I guess it's DOA, but
I
to
haven't-
challenge whether the permit was issued validly.
No, but this is a non-conforming since 1968. And the question is that why is it non-conforming since
Well, it's
that law?
non-conforming on the zoning,
that's
but it's
correct.
conforming to the NR 135, the reclamation permit at present. But they would need to get a new permit if they're expanding the land area. But the NR 135 permit only covers kind of post-operation reclamation. It doesn't cover the operations. But they would also need a DNR air quality permit. They need, right, so there is a separate bureau within DNR that monitors mining, right?
I believe that's correct.
So, but it's non-conforming in terms of the land use.
No, but even 135, when you look at it, this simply is asking for the formal reclamation information describing the post-mining plans for the land.
Right.
But it doesn't seem to be addressing the mineral extraction issue, or does it?
No, Wayne's issue is that the reclamation plan seems to be inadequate according to the standards of
Right.
the NR 135
So that's
permitting
where
requirements.
we have a standing then.
Well, as an affected landowner, or the county at the public hearing, or the nearby landowners, if you believe that a permit was issued invalidly, you can contest it in an administrative hearing, which
I see.
I don't know if it'll get to that, because these issues should be raised at the public hearing on the reclamation plan.
And that's what you've asked the county to postpone for right now.
I've asked for that so that we're getting other opinions and more information so we can revisit that December 18th decision.
Okay, so what is the next step for us?
Well, I think this was just an information
Yeah, go
discussion,
ahead.
sir.
I was just gonna say, I appreciate Mark pulling together all these things because of the, all the things affecting the, our northern boundary. I think there's just a lot happening, and he did it very fast, so.
Well,
Well, should we make a motion, though, to request that the county does slow down its process to ensure adequate assessment?
It'd be nice to have a resolution coming from council as to the city's position on the reclamation plan. Because, and our interest is because residents of Misty Valley, or Middleton Ridge, Middleton Ridge, or whatever they're calling it now,
Yeah.
because they are pretty close to an expanded quarry operation, they might want the city to speak on their behalf at the county permit process.
Okay, so do we want to make a recommendation to the city council?
You wanna make a
then?
recommendation to city council to pass a resolution, or?
We have a deadline of May 31st to get comments to Dane County, so I think
then
any
let's-
direct, you can, if you wish to make that motion, that's fine, but I think anything you say, I will say that Plan Commission's position and staff position, if that's how we wanna write it, is, I will provide the county with that and say a resolution may be forthcoming. I mean, I could do it that way. So,
That
You want-
sounds
Gotta
like
get
a
your
good plan, yeah.
So would you form the motion for us?
The motion would be that the Plan Commission expresses its concern that Dane County fully investigate all of the environmental and stormwater effects of the NR 135 permit,
Okay, need a second.
right? And that they consult with,
Surrounding communities?
well, that they certainly notify city of Middleton so that we can notify Middleton Ridge residents of any public hearing.
Did you want a distance that they need to go as well?
There are, I think, access issues. It looks to me like the trucks are accessing Middleton roads, the city
They
of
are,
Middleton.
it sounds like they're leaving, the quarry and going to Parmenter.
Looks like the only allowable access point, Parmenter and Greenbrier.
If you look in Yahara's materials, they, I think addressed that here somewhere. I thought I read that.
It's on
Well,
the-
yeah, they suggest no additional trucks.
It says traffic patterns under number 3, myth versus fact. Traffic patterns and activity remains the same.
Traffic pattern's the same.
Yeah, that's how I,
Well, the operation of the quarry is one issue, the zoning is a separate issue, then the reclamation permit is a separate issue. And the problem is, I think people are wanting us to use each step to
raise questions.
raise questions about the other. Because since it's a non-conforming use, well, this is the zoning question is, your ordinance actually lists non-metallic minerals as a conditional use. So you could have a conditional use permit process that puts restrictions on hours of operation, noise, things like that.
We can do that on new sites.
On new sites.
We have
Okay.
a couple that have CUPs on them,
But not on
that's-
this because it's prior.
This is non-conforming.
Okay, so we need a second to that motion before we go much further.
I think we need to restate the motion.
Okay, well, whatever.
Do what I have right
Let-
Why don't you read what we have?
Okay, let's do something before we,
First,
we
first
can't
is-
go without a second.
First, what I had was, what Wayne had said, but he didn't for the front motion, request to the common council that the city slow down its process to allow more time to review the reclamation plan. And then Kurt's was, Plan Commission expresses its concern that Dane County fully investigate all of the environmental and something effects of.
And
the
stormwater.
Stormwater, NR 135
In
reclamation plan,
operational, I'd say.
and notify the city of Middleton, so we can notify Middleton residents. Did I get?
Right, and add the, so environmental, stormwater and operational concerns
Okay, in
Yes.
operational, all right.
regarding traffic, hours of operation,
Blasting,
blasting.
X, yep. So, I'll second that.
Okay, all
I
right.
guess we're asking them not to look at it piece by piece,
Yeah,
but in aggregate.
correct.
That's good.
I don't know if I'll put that in or not.
You knew that was coming.
Yeah,
Okay,
all right. I think-
so any further discussion on that part?
And who seconded it again? Did?
Wayne
No,
did.
Wayne
Okay,
did.
sorry.
Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, so the motion passes, so.
And I would recommend that a briefing on this be prepared for the city council. Because whose district is that? Luke's.
Yeah.
So he's gonna be getting emails, I'm sure.
He already is.
Yeah.
I'm aware of it. So,
I mean, but I'm aware of what Meinholz writes in their letter to us, is that this quarry's existed since 1936, and people moved, right? I mean, in legal theory, they talk about moving to the nuisance, right? You move near an airport and you're surprised that there's noise.
I think the difference here, though, is that the existing quarry is rather confined.
And
the
now it's
question
gonna
is whether
expand.
folks really understood, and I don't think from the zoning, it would be clear to them that the intention was to expand that.
To the whole parcel,
yeah, so it's the expansion part, not
It's the expansion.
Yes, yes.
But it's my understanding there was a reclamation plan for most of the property, but they were adding 38 acres? Is that, Jim?
Yeah.
what
Just
did it
under
say?
40 acres.
Just under 40 acres. So there's really not much that, if there was no modification to the reclamation plan, they could still quarry and go east and do whatever they were planning to do under the original reclamation plan. It's this additional 38 acres, as I understand it from talking with Jim and with the county. That's what we're focusing on.
Except that they still have to be within their rights, with the non-conforming use. It still has to have been the contiguous ownership, right? And the.
But that's not
continuous
our,
ownership.
right, but that's
I know,
why
that's
the motion.
That's
Yep.
the town's,
Yep.
the county's.
Yep.
town's.
Okay,
I just wanna
any,
make sure
But is it an expansion of a non-conforming use? I don't know.
It goes back to that the sixties law, right? I mean, happens with.
Well, but if it's an expansion of a non-conforming use that now has become a conditional use, does that trigger a conditional use permit hearing? I don't know. I don't think anybody knows. But you've consulted with your attorney, so he would know, or she would know.
Okay, well, Mark is going to offer the comments
Oh, Mark Hazelbaker.
and by
knows his stuff.
31st, and this goes to the city council, and I guess, and Jim and his team are already working on this too with the county, so I guess anything else more we can do here now?
You're gonna
Yeah,
talk
there's
about
more on this Springfield issue that we're gonna talk about.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so let's move on to the next item.
Let's do
then.
the acre farm.
Yep. So next, I had the acre
That's fine.
farm, and so on May 16th, there was a fairly surprise announcement by the county, by the county executive and the county board chairwoman, Sharon Corrigan, to purchase announcing that the county had negotiated with the Acre family to purchase 160 acres of land immediately northwest of north of the Conservancy, for the purpose of adding it to the Conservancy. And here's the resolution in your packet. Basically, the justification or the rationale is that restoration of the property will reduce sediment and phosphorus runoff and improve water quality within the Pheasant Branch watershed, specifically or positively impacting Lake Mendota, and that there would improve infiltration and lead to significant stormwater volume reduction from the property. And the property is located within the recharge area of Frederick Springs, which are located to the south. I went to a county meeting last week about this as well, and a county committee meeting. And Laura Hicklin, the director of the Land and, I forget what they're called now, the Land and Water Department, or Land
That's
and
right here,
LWRD.
Land and Water Resources Department.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, there's Land and Water Resources, thank you. She has been, they said that they've been trying to get this property for several years. That restored prairie is the best land use for the site. They're happy that this is a case of where they're not pushing the operator off the land. This is, the land was for sale. It was for sale for $14 million. They negotiated just under $10 million. She said that they had spoken with farmers to the north, and that they are happy that this will provide a buffer with their operations. The Clean Lakes Alliance indicated support for the reasons of improved infiltration, reduced phosphorus, and reduced flood risk, so the same reasons. Someone asked about, well, we don't have to get into all the county rationale, that's not really our purview here. So basically, the reason I put this in the packet is to, again, was in our growth area, our intergovernmental agreement with the town of Springfield. We had originally anticipated the road, Bellefontaine, going through it. This shows the recharge area, serving the springs. If you go next slide, please. I think there's one more slide. So here's the farm itself. This is they're gonna remove all the buildings and eventually restore it to prairie habitat.
Do you know that they plan to extend, like, the Conservancy feel, like with trails and
That's
signage?
my understanding.
So it'd
They
be
don't
part-
have a plan for that, but that's, I
But
think, what they're.
but it'd be owned by the Parks Department, so it'll be a park facility
That would be
with public access.
right.
Yeah, I think Dane County, it will be just the
See what else.
extension of the Dane County Conservancy there, so I think that's,
Yeah.
Let's go back up.
sounds like a good thing, so.
Yeah, so basically we don't need to see this one, I want to go back to a map. Or this one's fine.
Oh, sorry.
So basically again, the Bellefontaine Boulevard, we had officially mapped, it was basically gonna run right through this parcel, and our trail system was planned to go along the southern edge of it. So, and then if you look at the map at your place, I knew this would happen, that we wouldn't, or we can actually pull that one up now. You have that separate, don't you? So if you look at where it says acre on the map, you can see that in our original intergovernmental agreement, we had anticipated a planned neighborhood. This is, again, from 2004. You should recall some of the other maps I showed at the beginning of the meeting. We had, subsequent to this map, the natural resource area was mapped through here. The FUDA study identified some areas. So this original planning that the city did with, working with the town, identifying our growth area 15 years ago, has subsequently been tailored or modified to reflect greater area of natural resource area within the acre farm. And now with this acquisition, that would all become natural resource area. So that's, we thought we should bring that to your attention.
I think that sounds
Now,
pretty
what
good.
happens to Bellefontaine?
Yeah, whatever.
Oh, and then the question Leaf just asked, what happens to Bellefontaine? I think it's unlikely the county would want to see the road go through the parcel. They haven't stated that per se, but I think it's unlikely that they would want to see that go through. So we would then be faced with routing the road north through the, yeah, it's hard to see with where her cursor is, but basically it would have to connect up to Balzer Road at Pheasant Branch Road is where it would, at the northwest corner, it would have to run along Balzer Road, which isn't the end of the world by any means.
And
But-
Bellefontaine was planned for 4 lanes, right?
Well, it's planned to be a major road, some would say arterial, some would say collector. I look at this, putting my transit hat on, if you look at the spacing of arterial roads in the Madison area, if you think of Midvale, Whitney Way, Gammon, they all have about a mile spacing, and that's roughly what this is. So if you look at our road system and what I foresee as working with regional transit planners as our transit needs, you know, the hope is that Bellefontaine will become a transit corridor that serves, as Eileen was mentioning earlier, some higher density, clusters of higher density mixed use neighborhoods in this growth area.
So Mark, you would think that's more like 20, 25 years out?
For the development of the road?
Yeah, in that area.
Well, you know, the road system is in place now, and I bet if you talk to people in Bishops Bay and North Lake, they're taking Balzer Road now to get to, you know, the west. I
I
mean,
was just
people are
gonna say
using.
that, there's a lot of traffic.
Oh, yeah.
Days on Balzer
Oh,
Road,
yeah.
on High Road.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
Greenbrier.
Yeah, so it's,
And on K,
you know, it's
and on
gradually
Century.
happening. So
And on, yeah.
our
So you
plan,
would say early,
the mayor, our plan was for the road to be built in conjunction with adjoining development.
So
Okay.
it
that-
could be 25 or 30
It-
or
it
40
could be,
years, you
right.
don't know.
okay.
We
So-
didn't know.
But we wanted, the reason we did the official, the planning and then the official mapping was to put landowners on notice that we expect to have this major roadway accommodated. So that was our, you know, we were being prudent. But now with the county's acquisition, it's unlikely that we would be able to use that route. So
So we go just around it,
we would go to the north.
north and then
Yeah.
west on
Yep.
Pheasant Branch to
Yep.
Bowser.
I still hope that our trail system that we had identified earlier on the bike map would connect Graber Pond east to the Laufenberg property at North Lake, and that would still be accommodated. So that is something that I think is important from a regional trail planning standpoint. Let's go to the airport. Are
Wait,
there
can
any
I-
questions about this? or-
Yeah, go ahead, Ben.
With the subtraction of the acre, 160, how many acres did you say was left approximately
I
in
think
this?
we have about 350 or 380 still. I gotta add it up.
So at years' worth of growth, do you think that this was, though, with your calculation?
It's probably, again, if bulk of it is happening in the community Bishops Bay over the next 20 to 30 years, it probably is about 20 to 30 years worth, at least. Our current densities that our most recent densities, 20 or 30 years worth. That doesn't count
So out
area C.
of 4 per acre?
Yeah, 4 to 5 per acre. So that doesn't count area C, which is still in our growth area as well, after the area A is substantially built out. So there's another couple hundred acres there too.
I think Eileen's guess of, would you say 350 acres?
Yes,
Yeah.
Jim.
Let him finish. I'll comment when Mark's
Well, I was
Okay.
gonna say, I think her guess is very good because you look at next to the acre farm, there's two 160-acre squares. So it's
Yeah.
320.
Right,
And then you
there's a
go
little bit around Graber.
around Graber Pond, that's probably another 40 acres, maybe a little more. So we're looking at about 360, 370 acres.
Yes,
Sorry,
Jim.
Jim.
I was gonna
Well-
ask Jim a question
Yeah,
first.
let's,
Go ahead.
well, let's, he got
Or
some.
did you want to
comments.
respond?
Go, ask the question.
I was gonna
please.
ask, when the county announced this purchase, since it's in your town, had you been made aware of it ahead of time?
I can tell you that in the last 18 years I've been on the board, the county has never contacted us once about a purchase of a development right or land any time. So now you know what
Wow.
it's like to be a town. Sorry to tell you.
I asked that because that's what I figured.
Wow,
So, yeah.
that's not good. That's just not good.
It's really not. We've got some, they purchased some development rights and did some other work in our town, basically at the same time they're doing this. So I think it's all part of Joe Parisi's, water quality attempts for the lakes, which I can understand, but it would be nice if he'd come to the communities and talk to us, because again, now the development rights that were on this property are extinguished. I have a transfer development right program within my town. I could have transferred those development rights to,
And it would
split.
have cost the county nothing.
No, they extinguish them. They won't give them to me. We've already talked to them a long time ago. The reason why we're here tonight, Art and I wanted to just come and talk. Again, we're good neighbors. We understand you had no clue this was coming. We don't either, but we have a lot of cut-through traffic now, and when they did Highway 12 and stuff, a lot of people learned how to, go down Pheasant Branch and cut over on Balzer and take Greenbrier and stuff. And, my residents are not real happy with all the traffic. And in fact, the farmers that are on Pheasant Branch are complaining they can't even get out to farm.
So just for all of us living in Middleton Hills area, when you put it on Google Maps to go anywhere, it always routes you up to Greenbrier to get over to 12, rather than, I always go Airport Road to 12 anyway, but it always tells you to go up to Greenbrier.
Yeah. We had a field road up in our town, between the town of Springfield and Barry, and it's a field road, and Google, they've been contacted numerous times, but they take people down this road and they just take them out in the field road and they get stuck out in the farmer's field. So anyway, but that's Google, that's not us tonight. But why we wanted to just touch base with you, because we know a couple of things. First off, by the county purchasing this land, it takes out that growth area that we had already agreed to. So I didn't know if you wanted to plan on sitting down sometime and addressing that. And the other thing is going to be your connector, because we've been hoping that Bellefontaine would go through, because that would help alleviate a lot of the traffic, because I know that this Bishop's Bay traffic that's going to be created is going to be coming on our little town roads, and they're not designed for that type of traffic. You can take, when the county was working on Highway Q over there in Wanakee, our traffic count went from 500 a day to over 3,000, on some of them little town roads. They're just not designed for that type of traffic. So, if you're interested and you would like to have a meeting, or if we're gonna begin the planning process, we would be interested in being at the table with you, because we know that you're gonna have a need to finish Bellefontaine, and to be honest, the sooner it gets built, the happier I'll be, because that'll help relieve some of my traffic issues.
No, we would be certainly interested. Wouldn't you say, Mark and Eileen? Yeah, I think that's, we want to be good neighbors too, and actually we have been wanting that, we should get together with Springfield and have these discussions.
Right.
So I remember coming there, a few years ago, but I think it's good time to start doing it.
Right.
Yes, Mark?
Mayor, I just wanted to clear the record, or set the record straight. We didn't know that the county was going to buy the land when they announced it, but we knew that they were interested in it at least last fall. Laura Hicklin, Land and Water Resources Department Director, did meet with city staff and asked about the city's interest in the property. We gave them the same information we presented tonight, which is this isn't our growth area, here's the road that's officially mapped. What we anticipated in terms of our growth area, we said that this, the area at the southeast corner, this is, part of Fredericks Hill, and that makes sense to preserve that area as part of the hill. And then if you recall the natural resource, the Y shape that Abby described, that was basically this area here, because you can see how it's drainage, and this is a drainage way here. But what we said is we anticipated that development along the western edge and part of the northern edge would help leverage preservation of the remaining lands. So that was our vision that we shared with them. They obviously have a bigger vision of the whole area.
So they did talk to the city
They
then?
did talk to us,
Okay.
and that's what I wanted to clear,
Okay.
because we have media
Okay.
here, and I just wanted to make sure that the headline isn't that they didn't reach out to us, but what we didn't know is that they were gonna buy the whole thing until the night before, the afternoon before the announcement, so.
Okay, well, let's work together so that they reach out to Springfield in future as well as Middleton. I think, Jim, we are here to work together, so.
So this will require update to our transportation and bike plan.
Well,
To reroute whatever,
That's actually something I'm glad you asked. Bellefontaine, I think, is unlikely to go through the development, but the path, I would argue, regional trail is appropriate in a recreation,
Yeah.
And so I'm hopeful that this idea of this regional trail that was gonna run through the southern edge of the parcel and connect to the Laufenberg, I hope the county still accommodates that. If you look at their resolution, they did have language about the property could also be used as a future regional bicycle trail connector to Governor Nelson State Park. So that doesn't mean we have to modify it. I hope that they respect or honor that part of the plan, because if
Well, we have shared interest. I mean, it helps everybody, counties, and they are also interested in the same thing we are. So.
well, but there might be people saying, now that it's part of the Conservancy, it shouldn't have a paved trail. That could come up now.
Have we heard that debate before?
So, I'm just saying it could happen. So, any other questions on this?
Well, that's a different issue. So any questions on this one? Okay, so move on to the next item then.
So then the last project is the airport, which I thought was only fair that we mentioned a city project potentially affecting the town of Springfield. So this is an inventory map that's part of the airport master plan, which is a process that began last year. We recently established a committee to guide the planning process. The initial first few months, the past year basically, Mead and Hunt, our consultant, did an inventory of existing airport facilities, and they've developed a forecast of aviation activity, all of which really aren't reliant on public input. It's just inventory and forecasts. And now they're entering a phase where it's appropriate to have a committee guiding the process and obtain public input along the way, as they identify potential projects and alternatives analysis and such. So we have the committee that was established in April. We had our first meeting. We had an open house last 2 weeks ago now, May 11th. May 9th, can't remember the day now. And May 9th it was. Yeah, May 9th at Cromery, probably about 120 to 150 people attended. Basically, what we're looking at is the existing airport here. You can see, here's a map of the existing facilities. There's about 39 hangars to the southwest there of the terminal, more airplane companies where the terminal building is. And then there's 4 hangars to the east where it says Capital Flight, and then 3 other hangars. And then these are the existing runways. The primary runway, which is 4,000 feet, roughly east-west, which is generating most of the conversation, and then the north-south turf runway, which is used when it's basically dry. You can't use it when it's too wet out. So this spring, it's not getting much use. I can't remember if I had another slide or not.
I think that's it.
Is that the last one? Okay, go back. So, thank you. So, what's going to be studied is potential land acquisition for more hangars, which would be located
No, Middleton, right?
in this area here, but potentially going north too. The second, and this is where my typo was in my staff comments, I apologize for this. In terms of delineating these projects, the idea of whether we should have a paved crosswind runway. A paved crosswind runway would need to be longer, which would require the realignment of Schneider Road. But a paved crosswind runway could potentially take some of the traffic away from the west and east. And then the third component, which is probably the most controversial at this point, is the idea of adding length to the existing runway to address the needs of existing aircraft that their insurers don't want them to use the airport if it's under 5,000 feet long. So some aircraft can land there now in dry weather. The aircraft that use it today are obviously able to land there today, but they don't use it when it's wet. So when the runway's wet, there's snow on it, they don't use it. So there has been some interest in studying a potential expansion. The concern from residents that we have heard is that this would lead to larger aircraft, specifically jets, and more aircraft, so more frequent air traffic. There's been a lot of, in my view, inaccurate information online, but that's what this planning process will hopefully sort through, is answer the questions that people are raising. The reason I put it on your agenda for tonight is because the town of Springfield boundary is right here. So if we did do any sort of expansion to the north, that would affect the town of Springfield. And as was noted earlier, our intergovernmental agreement identifies this as Area B, which envisioned long-term ag preservation.
Mark, what is the size of this land here in the town of Middleton? That's probably
This
20
here?
acres?
The tilled
Yeah,
area.
this
Yeah,
is,
this area.
I would say this is 40 acres, so.
No,
but
the one,
I know, I'm just saying it for
Yeah.
comparison, so this is
Oh.
40, so this is probably about, well, this tilled part is 20, and this part, if that, depending on how far east it goes, it wouldn't probably go that far east.
okay,
So I'd say about 20 acres.
So that is a lot for the hangars itself. I mean,
If you compare how many hangars are here,
that's probably six,
that could fit, now this is about,
8 acres.
oh, no, well, that's a good 10 acres, I would say. And that's about 40 hangars, 2 of which are 10-unit buildings. So there's about roughly 60, not quite 60 hangars here.
Yeah,
So yeah,
that's-
there's plenty of room
That's
there.
a lot of area
Yeah.
there, so.
But it's privately owned. It's, it's something that the city doesn't own at the present time.
Mm-hmm.
You'll recall that when we approved Laser Express, which is where the
Yep,
hand is,
yep.
we sought to have some of their surplus fill deposited here
Yep.
to, I was trying to plan ahead in case we ever needed a road. So that's all we've done. And then the last part of this is there's a solar array, how do you call it, the solar
Yeah,
project?
yeah.
And I'm not Abby's the best resource
No,
for
that's
this.
right.
But it's
right.
planned to be here.
Yep.
And that's being placed in an area where we didn't foresee any future airport development. So that's out of the way.
Any questions about this to Mark
why don't you
or
mention
Abby?
So Mark, if that runway was extended to the west, it'd be 1,000 feet?
They're gonna look at 1,000, they may also look at 1,500, I'm not sure, it's to be determined.
I was wondering if the runway protection zone needed to be
It would need,
expanded as well.
that would
I
need
mean,
to,
obviously it has to be shifted, but does it also have to be
it would have to be lengthened to the west, yes. And there would have to be some property acquisition.
Shifted or lengthened?
Shifted west, so I wouldn't say
That
lengthened.
was a different question
The
you had.
the trapezoid would shift west.
Okay, but its 1,000-foot length is basically adequate,
Right,
shifted, okay.
correct.
So this is going to cost, you're talking about lots of money, not just, I think, millions of dollars. So it's,
Well, all those things will be studied and known in due time. The goal is to have not the goal, we will have a public hearing upon the completion of a draft master plan.
And just for the record, there's no current plans to bring in cargo jets?
Correct.
absolutely not.
No, some people have said they're worried that UPS and FedEx will come in here. Well, they've been coming in here for 7
Oh,
years.
but they already come there for in smaller
There's
planes.
no-
no,
small
there's no
planes, right.
plan to change the classification of the airport in terms of what type
Correct.
of aircraft can come.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. There's the design group, the size is B2. So A is the smallest, E is the largest. B is A through E is related to the approach speed of aircraft, so how fast they fly when they approach. We're currently at a B, we're staying at a B. 2, there's 1 through 6, I think, it's Roman numerals 1 through 6, has to do with the size of the aircraft, wingspan and height of the tail. We are at the size 2 currently, that's what the design is, to keep it at that classification. We are actually a small airport dimensionally to accommodate aircraft of that classification, if you will. The idea is to stay in that classification and not be attracting larger sized aircraft. Does that mean a larger airplane couldn't come in when it's 1,000 feet longer. Well, yeah, it's possible that a slightly larger aircraft could come in, but it wouldn't be designed for that purpose, and they wouldn't generally want to come in for that purpose.
Any more questions on this, or any of those three things? Jim or Art, you have any questions?
No, from what I see on the map is,
Can you hand him the mic,
Where to go? Oh, yeah.
just for the recording purposes?
what I see on the map is, your lengthening of the runway is a little different than what we maybe knew years ago. But the north-south runway, we knew the last time we had our intergovernmental agreement that that was always going to be a proposal there, so we kind of knew that that would be coming eventually.
It's still a proposal, so I guess.
There are other maps out there. The reason I decided to only put this in the packet is because we haven't specifically ever decided to do any of those things. And so I guess my bad in terms of there being maps out there that, you know, put the cart before the horse a little bit maybe. It was ideas that were put on paper in the form of a map and then made available online. And so, but they've never been approved. They've never been, you know, it's not something the city has ever officially said we are going to do these things. We knew that they would have to go through a master planning process and justified, and there'd have to be a public hearing and environmental assessment and all those things. So the maps that are out there that have given the impression, and understandably so, that this was a done deal, and it's not.
Now, the grass runway is 2,000,
1,800 feet.
1,800 feet.
Since Mark mentioned environmental assessment, I just wanted to go back to the solar project really quickly.
All right.
And the city of Middleton, this has been something that's been discussed for years. It's gotten a lot of news coverage from Cap Times, I think Isthmus, and I'm pretty sure the Wisconsin State Journal covered it as well. I know you guys worked on it and the council approved it, but so the solar array that's going in, it'll be a 5 megawatt project owned by MG&E. The city has subscribed to, or has agreed to
500.
subscribe to 500 kilowatts. The Middleton Cross Plains Area School District has agreed to subscribe to 1.5 megawatts. 1 megawatt, which then leaves 3.5 megawatts that will be part of the shared solar program. There was recently a Nextdoor post specifically related to the airport solar array, and there were some concerns raised from some residents in the town of Middleton related to environmental contamination from the solar project during construction that could impact their private wells. They requested a copy of the environmental assessment for the solar project, and that was provided to them. They then made a formal request for a public hearing related to the environmental assessment. There was a set time frame in which anyone could request this public hearing. They missed the time frame, but of course it made sense for us to still accommodate their request. It was shortly after the expiration period. So Mike Davis, our city administrator, has been working on setting up the public hearing for the environmental assessment specifically related to the solar array. And that will happen on Thursday, June 20th. And I can't remember the time. Is it 6 p.m.?
So it's getting a little bit delayed then.
I'm sorry, what was
It's
that?
getting, there's going to be a little delay now then, or would it delay the project?
Oh, the
or-
project?
Yeah.
I don't think so, because we just finalized, we had our attorneys working on the land lease agreement, and
okay.
we just got the final negotiated copy today.
Okay,
And I think that will be on the city council agenda for, the 4th. So I don't think that the project will be delayed. My hope is that they can
Okay.
still begin construction this year.
yeah, I think this is pretty important for the whole area here.
Yep. Do you remember the exact time?
Sorry.
I'm pretty sure it was 6 p.m. that night.
Okay,
We can send you that information.
yeah, that's all right. Any questions for Abby or Mark or Lean or Art or Jim? Any questions?
Or feedback on any of
Or
these projects,
feedback.
yeah.
Do we want to consider a resolution or staff comments just to encourage Dane County to keep that bike connector trail through the,
I guess that's too early, I don't know.
or it's probably too early, because that would be at the design phase, but.
Okay, if there are no more questions, then need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Need a second?
Do the last time.
We are adjourned.
Wait, yeah, we already did the